The current real estate market is so hot that contract prices right now have actually surged ahead of comparable sales in the neighborhood. Preemptive offers are becoming the new norm, and buyers know that they have to offer hundreds of thousands of over asking while waiving all their contingencies in order to be competitive. Sounds great, right? Well, not all the time. The problem with offers like this is that when you start bidding so high over asking price, there's going to become a point where you disconnect from the recent sales in the area. That's going to be an issue for an appraiser if the property needs a loan to fund the purchase. In situations like these, appraisal shortfalls will be more and more common. What is an appraisal shortfall? Well, take for example a property that is in contract at $1.3 million. However, the recent comparables in the neighborhood only support a value of $1.2 million. In this situation, the bank will treat this property as a $1.2 million property and only issue a loan given that value. That means that the buyer will have to make up the $100,000 difference in the price in cash if they want to close the transaction. In many cases, the buyer has already waived an appraisal contingency, meaning that they are on the hook for that difference. Yes, you heard that right. No appraisal contingencies. The market is so hot right now that if a buyer wants to get one of the most in-demand properties, oftentimes they're going to have to waive their appraisal contingency, which means, yes, I will take this property even if it doesn't appraise. While it is possible to persuade an appraiser to push the contract value higher a little bit based on current market conditions, appraisers still need to abide by strict appraisal standards that the lender requires. If an appraiser is suspected of pushing the price too much without closed transactions from which he or she can compare, that may trigger a full underwriter review, and that could be detrimental to the loan process itself. But the harsh reality is this market is so hot, current buyers who want to get the property that they love are forced to offer a little over what the market rate is and push their down payment up a little bit so they can get the loan amount that they need. Here are a few recent sales in the East Bay that I think have fallen victim to low appraisals, and I'm going to show you why. And the two homes that I think have just sold astronomically above their appraised value was this one here in Piedmont, 111 Wildhood. This thing was listed right before Christmas and it was listed at 1.7, and it sold for $2.45 million after receiving 19 offers at $750K over asking. And frankly, I think the reason this went so high was because of the lack of inventory during the time. I did have some buyers who were considering this property, so I did run some comps in the area based on what had sold at the time this one was on the market. And I mean, as you can see here, the maximum comp was at 2.1. But when you're really looking at this square footage, you know, in the 17s, I mean, things were selling in the 1.7 range. And, you know, at this point, I told my clients I think it could maybe hit 2, but even 2 could have been a little stretch. Then obviously somebody came in at 2.45. It was a cash offer, so there's no way it would have appraised at that value. But being a cash offer, they didn't really need to worry about that. But if they wanted to beat out 18 other offers, they had to go big. The second home, it actually hasn't been marked pending in the MLS yet, but it has closed, was a property at 4207 Huntington Street. I also had buyers looking at this one. This was also listed on the market right before Christmas. And it was a 3,300 square foot home, 4-bedroom, 3-bath. I mean, pretty dated home, dated mid-century. But when we look here at the comps, and we can just go through the photos really quickly. I mean, it had amazing views. But it still had, you know, a very dated kitchen and baths, although there was a lot of square footage. When we looked at the comps, I mean, really nothing nearby was going over 1.45. And actually the home that resembled it most was this home on Barner that sold a few weeks before this one was listed. Almost identical square footage, almost identical layout. I mean, almost had the same views even. And it had this large lot. It had this open sort of patio space, and it had a full length, second story with a wet bar like the first home did too. And this thing sold for 1.45 after only receiving like 2 or 3 offers 3 weeks before. But for some reason in December, this property on Huntington received 16 offers. Was it 16 or 15? One or the other. And it went for 1.6, which there's no way any of the comps that an appraiser used would have justified a 1.6 price. So quite certain that the buyer had to bring some extra cash to the table to make this one close, but it just is representative of how nuts this market is right now.